All right, welcome back to another episode of Obsessed with Death. If you could, introduce yourself, tell the people listening who you are and what we're gonna get into today.
Yeah, so my name is Sophia Hart, and I have an LVAD, which is a left ventricular assistive device. It pumps the left side of my heart, and I am due for a heart transplant. And I was living with a disease called cardiomyopathy, which was non-symptomatic up until it's symptomatic. And I got hit with it at 29 years old, and now I'm on life support waiting for a new heart.
We're gonna get into a couple of different things here. We do start every episode off the same, so I am curious to get your thoughts on this. It may seem kind of like a silly question almost, just based off of what you said and what we're going to talk about. But I am still curious what your relationship with death is like right now. And maybe how it's changed over time. What was it like before? Did you think about it a lot? Was death something that concerned you? And then now, as you're dealing with all of this, how has your relationship with death changed?
So my relationship with death, I always felt very close to it, but I never really thought about like my own demise, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Um, I lost a lot of friends. I've lost a lot of friends and family at a very young age. So I always felt like I understood death and like felt like the I was close to Earth and the other side. I always felt very connected to that. That didn't really happen until I was like 15, but like for most of my adult life, I felt super connected to that. And I've always wondered about death and I've always questioned it and just what happens between here and there and like that little void that we have and the questions that we have. And like you talk about, like the taboo of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got sick, though, that I like realized, oh my God, this can be me and this can be anyone else.
Yeah.
And so facing death, going to funerals and celebrating friends' lives got very normal to me. So death felt very normal to me. But once I got sick, it all felt super unfamiliar and very foreign. And it was a whole new feeling to feel because you're looking death in the face as opposed to just living with it.
You think it could happen to anybody. Obviously, you could see it happen to your friends, but it's I think it's your brain protecting you almost by not making you think like, oh, this could also happen to me. Like it really takes something, almost life-changing for you, I guess, and for a lot of people to really have it hit them like, oh yeah, this is going to happen to me. It's going to happen to everybody, and it's like this is just part of life.
Part of life, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened with me. Is like I was like, oh shoot, like, whoa, wait,
Yeah.
these people can be at my funeral. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. I just like would go to these funerals and I was the saddest person there and I was the most connected there and I felt all the emotions like to a degree that I mean, looking back on it, I'm like, is it healthy or is it not healthy? Like, and I think it's because I was so unfamiliar with the fact that it could happen to me that my emotions were so heightened
Yeah.
in these moments, but it also brought me super close. So like I've always felt connected to Earth and the other side, but I never put myself in that position, if
Which,
that makes
yeah, which seems like, I don't know, probably a great way to live your life, a healthy way to not be like dwelling on the fact that you're going to die all the time is probably a healthy way to live. I
yes.
think that there's obviously a sense of like being aware that it's going to happen. That's good. I don't think anyone should be like completely oblivious to the fact. I don't think you should be walking around thinking that you're invincible and that you're going to live forever. But there's like a middle ground that I think is probably the healthiest. And it sounds like you were sort of in that area. And then everything sort of changed, right? There was
Mhm.
these symptoms that were coming up that I'm assuming must have sent you to a doctor or, the emergency room or what was that situation like? When did the symptoms start? What really caused the like initial concern?
the timeline is super important. So August of 2022, I came down with an extreme rash all over my body, and I thought it was food allergies or like something. And I was at a friend's wedding, and I took a Benadryl,
Hmm.
which is probably the worst thing that I could have done for myself because I didn't know I was in active heart failure. And it made me had like an adverse effect. And so my rash actually got worse and I had stroke-like symptoms. And
Wow.
that was in August. I didn't know. Looking back on it, I realized that it's stroke-like symptoms, but they weren't that obvious in the time.
Mhm.
So I guess it wasn't even that much longer after that. The end of October of 2022, I was working at a horse farm that I grew up at, and I couldn't run up the stairs without having to sit down. And that basically happened overnight. So then I continued on. I kept doing my job. I kept doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I started like only drinking water, only eating healthy and eating salads and eating greens because I thought I was just like out of shape and like deteriorating from that. I don't know what my body was telling me.
Yeah.
And that just kept getting worse. So I went from not being able to run up a flight of stairs to being extremely fatigued, but in a like it's really hard because I feel like I have to share like how I grew up. Like I grew up riding horses. Horse people are just steel. Like they don't stop. And the horses can't feed themselves. So even as sick as you are, like you're going to make sure that those horses are fed. So that's kind of the mentality that I was in. I was like, well, I can't stop working. I'm the only employee right now, but I can't get up a flight of stairs. And like all these little things, like carrying the water buckets, like they were easy tasks before. And then all of a sudden overnight, like it was painful. Like it hurt. Like my body started hurting. I was super fatigued and it was very hard to like explain it like because I wasn't out of breath in a way that you would think I was, but also I was my diagnosis, which we'll get into, is a non-symptomatic side of dilated cardiomyopathy. So I at the time that I was getting my symptoms, I was already in end stage.
When you think about dealing with end stage heart failure, you're assuming your symptoms are going to be like heart related. Like
Yeah,
you're going to feel pain in your
yeah,
chest.
I did end up feeling something.
Yeah. And is that what ended up getting you to the hospital?
Yeah, so I did like I was probably like 2 weeks with those symptoms, like of the end stage, what I now know is end stage heart failure symptoms.
Yeah.
But I think I did like 2 weeks being super fatigued with the body aches, and then I started getting really bad swelling in my knees. And that is what started to alarm me. That's what
Yeah.
the alarms are going off because the fatigue wasn't going away. The shortness of breath wasn't going away. I was treating my body the best that I possibly could. I was putting almost nothing into it at this time. I thought it was allergies of some sort. And then I thought it was Lyme disease. And then that's what ended up getting me to the hospital is that my knee swelling went up to my abdomen and then I couldn't sleep. So I was sleeping sitting up and like even doing laundry and stuff like that, like it was unbearable. And then the morning that I woke up and my abdomen was super swollen, it looked like I was pregnant.
Yeah.
That's when I went to the hospital.
You looking back on it, obviously your body was just trying to give you so many signs, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it's like they also could have been so many other things. Like you get a
Yeah.
rash, and it's like you don't think you're having heart failure because you have a rash.
There was only one doctor. I still don't know who he is. I don't know what his name is. I don't know anything about him. He walked
Yeah.
in because, like, when you're in the ICU, it's crazy. It's a rotating door, and so many people come in, and it's really hard to keep track of it. And there's one doctor, and I have not seen him since I was in the ICU in 2022. And he came in and he said, "Did you ever have a rash?" And I
Wow.
was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my fucking God." Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Am I allowed to
No,
swear?
you could say whatever you want. Yeah, it's fine.
I was like, oh my fucking God. Yeah, I had a rash. But it was funny because when he asked me when I was in the ICU, you're like, so like your brain's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I said, no. I was like, no, I didn't have a rash. And then he left. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah,
I was like the rash that I had that summer,
yeah,
like that was insane.
yeah,
And so then I like put it all together and I was like, yes, I had a rash. And then I did my own research and, rashes are like my body was trying to tell me that I was sick.
yeah.
And I think at that time, like in August of that year, I was in end stage heart failure, but I was non-symptomatic. So it wasn't showing, which is even crazier.
Again, it is so wild how our bodies do try and tell us these things, but it's like unless and what's so dangerous too, and doctors tell you all the time, like don't Google stuff, right? It's like you Google people are gonna be getting rashes now, and they're just gonna be thinking that they're having heart failure, or they're
Yeah.
gonna have swelling in their legs, and you could Google it. I mean, I used to be so bad at Googling things, and it was always the worst. It's a nightmare. But you when you see something like that, you assume, well, it's got to mean something. I guess you just don't assume, obviously, the level that things were at. So you can't. You're sleeping sitting up, and at this point,
That was only like 2 nights.
yeah. So
Like
I mean,
I didn't let that go very far. I
yeah,
knew, like
yeah.
my soul knew. Like I was like, I'm fucking dying. I gotta go.
So what was it like when you get to the ER? Do they take you back immediately? Like, how does that whole process go?
So someone in my life unfortunately told me like the ER is not gonna do anything for you. And oh, you don't have insurance, you're an idiot, is what I was told because I was calling this person and being like, what do I do? I was like an off the grid chick, like trying to get medical help. Like it wasn't my forte. So I listened to that advice and I didn't go to the hospital because the ER wasn't going to do anything for me, which is complete bullshit, which I
Yeah.
want to make a public service announcement. If you are ever sick or you feel sick or you are questioning anything, please go to the emergency room because they legally cannot turn you away.
Yeah, they'll
Um,
they'll do something.
they'll do something for you. So, um, I went to the walk-in clinic because I thought the ER wasn't going to do anything for me. And I was super nervous not having health insurance. And
Yeah.
when I went to the clinic, they could hear that I couldn't breathe. So they turned me away immediately and they said, you need to go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room. Ironically, that same person that told me all of that stuff was working that day.
Yeah.
And I got into the ER and I could not breathe. I mean, walking from my truck to the receptionist was impossible. Almost,
Mm.
it felt impossible.
Yeah.
So I got to the receptionist and he was like, "Nope, we're gonna see you right now. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to go and sit." And so they took me in immediately. I was there for a Lyme disease test because that's what I thought was wrong with me, or that's what I was assuming. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, can I just like get blood work done? So I was there. They gave me the blood work. They came in after my blood work was done and they just said, you don't have Lyme disease. And I just knew, like, I knew immediately
Yeah.
that I was in heart failure. Um, so that's basically all that they had to say, and that's kind of how it went down. And then they started the whole like EKG process. Mind you, like I was a brand new medical patient, so I had like no experience. I didn't even know what PCP stood for, which is primary care physician. Like I had
Yeah.
no idea. Anyone in my life knows that like I was the last person to go to a hospital. So I didn't know what was going on. Like they started to do more labs and then do the EKG. And then someone came in to my room and did an echo bedside. That was the first time that I've ever had any of this stuff done. They basically told me I was in end stage heart failure, but they couldn't tell me until I got the cardiac MRI.
Mhm.
And they didn't have the machines at my local ER to do that. So I got medevaced from my hometown on the vineyard and then got sent to Boston.
So okay, so you're in Boston. We don't have to get into like every little detail, but I mean, all of this happened very quick. You are living with an LVAD now. I'm assuming that that procedure was took place in Boston.
It happened in a very like emergency like setting. So I got to Boston. They did the cardiac MRI. I was working at 12%. of my heart. Instantly told you need a heart transplant, most likely. This was all before they did the genetic testing, which that's a whole part of the story. My sister held a genetic mutation and they never DNA tested her. So I didn't know that I was living with this. And if I had known that I was living with the genetic mutation, I think the process probably would have gone a little different. But I'm also, again, like I'm not a medical professional. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they took me to Mass General. This was before we knew that I had the genetic disposition. And we talked about LVAD, heart transplant very quickly, very briefly. They started an aggressive medical trial. It's called the Four Pillars of Medicine. If anyone's in medicine, they probably know what I'm talking about. And so they took me off epi IV drip, and my heart was surviving off of that medication.
Hmm.
So they took me off the IV drip. The point was to get me off of IV drips and then get me onto an oral dose. So the goal was to have me on oral medications and then have me be able to like live outside the hospital or in the hospital and wait for a heart transplant because of the condition of my heart. My heart failed in that process.
Hmm.
So the epi IV taking me off of it didn't work, and the oral was not working. And so my heart ended up tanking. I
Yeah.
tanked. And that's how I ended up with the LVAD. So the LVAD was in conversation. It was an option. It was, LVAD to transplant or just stay in the hospital and go to transplant or just do medicine and go to transplant. And in that process, the LVAD was chosen in an emergency setting because of the way that like we did the process of it.
So they mention the idea of the possibility of you getting an LVAD,
Yes,
and you're aware of it, and they sort of explain what it is, but it didn't really get past that point until the procedure they were currently working on stopped working.
correct.
Yeah. And then so how quickly does that happen? Like I'm assuming if you said it's all within a week, it's got to be a couple of days, right? They're
Well,
just like,
so
we got to
yeah,
prep you. Yeah.
well, that was emergency. So I got told that I needed the LVAD. They came in and they were like, "Yeah, everything tanked." I was like, "No shit, I died last night." And well, I felt like I died. I didn't die. I never
Yeah.
actually coded. They were amazing. They handled everything perfect. Shout out to Allison Nine in Massachusetts. But
Yeah.
I got told that morning, and then I was in surgery by 4 o'clock
Got it.
because I don't really know the medical side of things, but I don't think I was going to make it, is what the issue
It
was.
sounds like, yeah, you probably needed the LVAD immediately. And you were saying too that I would assume that there must be some sort of tests or some sort of exams that they do to make sure that you're a qualified candidate for an LVAD, but they weren't ever really given the time to do that.
Exactly. So that's what normally happens with LVADs is that like you prepare for it, you're evaluated for it, you're probably in like a long-term regression of heart failure, and you have these discussions. And that's what we started with me. We started to have those discussions, and I was not able to go past those discussions because it was an emergency setting. So normally,
Yeah.
yes, it's you're evaluated, you are chosen, you're picked, you're told like you can handle this device, and then you're given the device and you have like a surgery date and you know that you're going to get it. There's just very few people who like I said, my condition is less than 1% in the world. And that's kind of how it goes down is emergency setting.
Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky that we live in a time where something like that could happen and they could just everyone could think on their feet and there's this thing that's waiting for you. I mean, that's I guess the best way to spin it, right? I mean, nobody wants to live with end stage heart failure, but the fact that they're like, oh, we actually have this machine that as long as everything works correctly, will continue to pump your heart for you until we get all this other stuff figured out. I mean, it's wild to think about that there's just like this machine. And now I do want to get into that part of it as well, right? So now you've only been given like this limited information about this thing called an LVAD. I'm assuming from what you've said, you've never really done any research or you don't know much about this machine now that is basically responsible for keeping you alive. What was it like, those first couple of days? I'm assuming obviously a lot of recovery in the hospital, but like what was it like waking up with this new machine basically as part of your body? And then how was that transition, from hospital to like now now I just go back to living my life, slowly over time.
Gosh, my like first few days in the hospital, I don't remember.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Honestly, like the LVAD, because my sister had it, and like I saw such a success story with her having it, and I've known other people that have had the LVAD and gotten transplanted and were success stories. The LVAD like didn't it didn't scare me as much as it probably would scare someone else and other LVAD patients that I've talked to that were really scared about it. When I woke up in the hospital, I was just so determined to get out of that hospital because I had no medical experience whatsoever. So being inside of a hospital setting was super unsettling for me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I needed to get out and go home and go heal at home. The LVAD immediately, I always was like a very unbothered person and could like live and let go and had a, positive mindset on that aspect. So when I got the LVAD, I was like, okay, it is what it is. I'm I'm given this device, obviously. It's keeping me alive, but like get me the fuck out of the hospital. Like that's like
Sure.
all I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And so I was just so determined when I was in the hospital to get better and be able to walk and be able to breathe and be able to get to this point, knowing that I was going to leave the hospital with a device and be a full-time medical patient, but
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it until I got home because once I left the hospital, that's when shit got real.
Yeah, you become 100% responsible for it, right? And we've talked obviously before this interview. So one of the things that I at least that goes through my brain is the initial like, okay, here's how to use this piece of machinery now. What is that process like? Is there like a PowerPoint? Do you get a pamphlet? How do they teach you how to use this basically, life-saving machine for, however long you're going to be using it for?
Yeah. So with me, I like to think, and I've convinced myself that I was a fast process because I was emergency and they like expedited the whole situation. I
Yeah.
hope that that's the case only for me because the way that they expedited everything and told me everything, it was like rapid fire.
Yeah.
And you almost didn't have enough time to actually take in the information. But kind of exactly what you said. I mean, they give you pamphlets, they give
Yeah.
you like paperwork, and they do in-person training. So I had to like before I was allowed to be discharged, they did in-person training and you have to check off on like all of the training. So they made sure that I was aware of like the device, how to do like my charging kits, how to
Yeah.
check for my numbers. And so you have to go through like multiple sessions of that and multiple days and then they check you off to make sure that you're good to go out into the wild with it. But I also think it's crazy because
Yeah.
you're in the hospital setting for that
Yeah.
and there's so many people I'm just a lot of people think it's really unfortunate that I have this so young, but I feel very fortunate that I'm able to be someone that lives with it so young because hopefully I can teach other people how to be better at living with it.
Yeah.
Because the hospital, I mean, my hospital specifically, they gave me directions and advice, but yeah, I mean, I could have just read a pamphlet and learned how to live with this.
The way that we started talking, like how this podcast came about, was because you have this TikTok account where you do talk about your LVAD, and I said this to you before as well. It felt very different than like what you normally see on TikTok when somebody has some sort of health condition or medical device or whatever it is. Yours was like so much more casual, I guess, than a lot of other people. Like a lot of other people, there's like like very intense music playing, or they're just like they're like staring directly in the camera. You're just like sitting on the couch, and you're like, oh yeah, this is the thing, and here it is. But you do a very good job of explaining it, but you made it seem so much less scary, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And I
Because
think,
it's not that scary, and that's the thing.
yeah,
And then it's like my huge thing in life. Like I was just telling my friends partner, I'm out in California right now visiting a friend, and he picked me up from the airport. And I was telling him, I'm like, if I'm not stressed, don't be stressed. Like, if
Totally.
I'm stressed, be stressed,
Sure.
please.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like my thing. I mean, that's also who I am, and that's who I was before I got sick. And we'll talk about that, like,
Yeah.
pre and post being sick. But I carried a lot of who I was and my spirit and my character with me, like through this medical journey. And if you knew me before, like I was super chill, unbothered, you know,
Well, that's another thing that you said to me that I thought was so funny and like kind of perfectly encapsulates like who you are in this whole journey is, because my brain goes to how nervous I would be, how anxiety ridden I would be with all of this. When we spoke before, I had a very, very minor procedure where I had to have a PIC line put in, which is just an IV that goes in your arm. And I couldn't tell you how incredibly stressed I was about that entire situation. And of course, nothing happened, and I overreacted, and I made myself crazy for
yeah.
absolutely no reason. But when I say to all these things to you, and we're talking about, just going home with this machine and living your life with this machine, something that you said to me that I just got such a kick out of, and again I think is so perfect, is you go, I'm asking you about charging the batteries, and aren't you scared that you're gonna like pull a plug out or you're gonna forget to charge or whatever, all the things that I would just be worried about constantly, and you're just like, I don't know, man, I honestly, I'm the person who their phone would always be dead. Like I've never remembered to even charge my phone, and this is going just fine. Like this is totally fine. And I think that's such a great way of looking at it, in the sense of like, yeah, I was bad at keeping track of things and doing stuff, but like this is my life. This obviously I'm going to take care of this, and it's going to be fine. So I don't know. I think that translates a ton on TikTok. I think it's why people probably, are following you and watching your videos and enjoying your content. And I think there's got to be people that are going to get this procedure in the future, or they're going to end up with an LVAD at some point in their life, and hopefully they find your videos and it helps them, because I would assume that's a part of why you're doing it. I'm sure it helps you kind of, process the whole thing, be able to make that content. But I just know, if I was in your situation and I found your videos, it would definitely be very helpful.
Yeah, it's funny that you say the phone charging thing because so many people comment on my videos, like the videos that go viral. They're like,
Yeah.
I can't even keep my phone charged. And I'm like, if
Yeah.
only you knew who I was and who I still am. I go
Sure.
to bed every night. This morning I woke up. I'm in California, like I'm in across the freaking country on life support. I woke up
Sure.
this morning, didn't charge my phone.
Yeah.
I woke up with a dead phone. But we're leaving the house today. My phone's dead. I'm telling like my friend Katie, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, shit, my phone's dead." And she's like, God damn it, Sophia. But we go into the car, and the first thing I did was make sure that I had charged batteries, which is so funny because yeah, same, like
Of course. Yeah.
it's not me. Like I have a dead phone, I have a dead computer, I have dead everything, but you don't have a choice. Like your instincts will kick in, and like I don't have a choice. Like I have to keep my stuff charged. Am I perfect? No. Am I walking around with a go bag with dead batteries? Sometimes 100%.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, and that's where that like me and like who I am comes into play and like meshes with my medical life, is that I am still human and we will run out of battery. And I don't keep my phone charged, but I try and keep my Janice, well, I call her Janice. I don't know if I've said that on the
You
episode.
didn't mention that. No. Okay. Janice.
I
Sorry. I
try
was
and keep
calling.
Janice charged.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just it's funny because I am that person and I'm still that person. That person hasn't left who I am. Like I'm still my old self. You just do not have a choice. And
Yeah.
I would rather wake up with a dead phone than dead batteries. Also, the batteries are so annoying and they beep. And if they really die, then there's a really crazy alarm that goes off, and you just don't want to deal with that. And I also don't want to deal with my medical team, and I don't want to deal with, like, I need a heart transplant. So, like,
Yeah.
I want to keep my batteries charged because they look at every single area of your life. So, it's obviously 100% of my focus to keep my device charged, and I'm still waking up with a dead phone. So
Well, yeah, I mean, look, if priorities here, as long as, your batteries are charged, the phone will be okay. What was it like going through the airport? Is that hectic at all? Like, are you setting off alarms?
I pre-planned my whole trip. It took a ton of work.
Yeah,
I was very on top of it. I called my airline. I was flying out of Logan in Boston. They were absolutely incredible. Between JetBlue, I flew JetBlue and then TSA.
yeah,
So I had told them before I was getting there that I was coming, like through the airport.
yeah,
And so JetBlue was waiting for me and like was fully prepared. And then TSA took me, and I basically had two escorts. I had a male and a female. The male went through all of my bags and equipment, and the female body searched me. So just did like a quick pat down, was super
yeah.
respectful, did not even go over the drive line, but I couldn't go through any machines and neither could my bags. So
Got it.
they took me through like all these little gates, like the
Sure.
gates that separate us going through TSA. And I just went into like this little tiny area between like where you scan the bags, did like a full body pat down, and then none of my equipment went through the machines, and they were amazing.
Yeah.
It was actually a very smooth experience. I thought it was going to be more intense than it was. They read every label on every dressing kit. Read every label on my
Sure.
medications. They read my batteries. They compared my batteries to the batteries that were on me to make sure that they were the same.
Mm.
They were just very thorough about the physical evaluation.
Yeah, that's great to know. I mean, that makes sense. It's like obviously preparing, calling ahead makes the most sense, but that's great. I'm glad that was sort of
Yeah, it was super smooth.
a
Like to the
yeah.
point where I was 3 hours early
Oh, yeah.
for my
Yeah.
flight. And
Hey,
I'm not
that's yeah.
early for anything. And
Yeah.
I was like, shit, I'm 3 hours early. What do I do?
Yeah, that's
It went
probably yeah.
so fast.
It's probably the better situation. It's probably
Yeah,
better to be. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. So you have this LVAD now. You've had it since 2022. Before we just get into like the day to day and how things are going now, how does it work? One of the first videos I saw of yours was you were basically just explaining how you don't have a heartbeat. You don't have a pulse,
yeah,
right? Like this thing is pumping your heart for you. So
yeah.
however you want to explain it, like if you wouldn't mind just sort of explaining how it works and what it's doing exactly.
They can't see this on video, obviously, but I will explain it the best that I can. So I have
Yeah.
two 14-volt lithium batteries, and then I have a controller. So this is going to be powering my controller, which is then connected to a drive line that goes internally, wraps through my abdomen, and connects to a motor that is connected to my heart, which then the external batteries and controller power the motor to pump, and it pumps blood through the body as a normal heart would.
Yeah.
So it's basically an engine and a system for the heart to function as a normal heart, but I'm powered by external components that are all connected through and connect to an internal mechanism, which is the motor. So this controls the inside of my body, but it's all connected through externally and through that cord. So you
Got it.
cannot disconnect this cord.
Yeah, that's like the main, obviously that's like the main thing right there is like keeping that whole area protected, I would imagine, right?
Yes.
Like I mean,
Yes.
obviously
I mean, I have a dressing.
that like covers it. Yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are like the next steps? I know we talked about this briefly before as well. But obviously, the next step is getting a heart transplant. Is that something you're considering? I mean, can you live with an LVAD forever? Like, what are like the next steps to? I'm assuming you're on a transplant list. Of things that I've heard about transplants lists in the past is obviously these things could take years. So, like, obviously, whatever you're comfortable sharing. But like, what do you see happening in the next few years?
I am not destination. So a destination heart failure patient like with an LVAD would mean your destination. So your LVAD destination to life, to end of life. I am not. I am a bridge to transplant, which means this is technically like a bridge to get me to transplant. I am not listed yet. because everything happened so fast, I just wanted to go about the list the most appropriate way that I could. And there's so much more involved than you would think of with going for a transplant list. And so I'm going to be doing the evaluation soon to be put on the list, but I am not destination. I'm eligible, I'm a candidate. It just depends on when I'm ready to do it. And so once I'm ready to do the evaluation, then I'll be listed and then eventually I'll get a heart.
And you mentioned briefly, obviously I know like there's qualifications, quote unquote, and you hear things that people about people who are getting liver transplants or whatever it is, and obviously they need to be taking care of themselves. Like people could get disqualified from being, a transplant if they're, not taking care of themselves or their body or whatever. You quickly mentioned, I wasn't sure if this is the same thing, but they could keep track of if you're keeping your batteries charged. Like, is that something that they look at? Like, do they keep I'm assuming they keep track of how well you're maintaining the LVAD as part of the process to get qualified for a heart transplant.
Yeah, I think that they look at those sides of it, which is kind of ironic because LVAD teams, I mean, my LVAD team, at least specifically, like they're not transplant. So, like, once you get transplanted, they have nothing to do with you,
Yeah, it's like a
which is
whole new
a
group of
very
people.
interesting concept to me. And I don't personally agree with it. But yes, they can, so this white cord out of my battery, when I go in for
Yeah.
my clinical appointments, they plug this in and they can see in their system every single alarm that's ever gone off of my LVAD.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
they're not tracking it. Like they can't track it live.
Sure.
They can only plug it into a system.
But they do, yeah, they basically
But they do look at it.
they
Yeah.
plug you into a computer and like get stats
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
you and your LVAD.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I mean, I guess yeah, there must be some sort of, limit to alarms going off to where they guess to
I
where
don't
they
even, yeah,
judge.
see, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really talked to my team too much about transplant, but I don't
Yeah.
think, I mean, it might affect you for like, are you going to take care of your new heart type thing? But I think they more track like the medications. Like, are you taking your medications? Are you showing up to your appointments? Are you
Oh,
answering
because they're
your
getting
phone
like
call?
vitals and stuff from that as
Yeah.
well. Man,
Yeah.
that's so wild.
Yeah.
It really is crazy.
Yeah.
We do live in like the craziest
I
time
know.
where again, like you're literally getting plugged into
Yeah.
a computer. It's so wild. And you're living your life still. I mean, I think that's such a big part of this whole thing, right? Is like you were living a normal life. You were in your late 20s, early 30s, just working and all of this happened so quick and everything. It seems like all of this, everything happened so fast.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I guess to sort of just even wrap things up here, it's like go check out the TikTok account. What is the TikTok account? Where can people go?
It's called Life with Sophia's Heart.
Okay, so definitely go check that out. But I mean, I guess I don't know, not to like have like a cliche ending or anything, but I'm curious if like if there are people listening who are in a similar situation, or if somebody finds this and listens to it, as they're going through a similar journey. I mean, is there any advice that you would give people? Like what would be like a piece of advice that you think would be valuable to somebody who's in a similar situation?
Man, I don't know. It chokes me up every time I talk about this stuff. I cry on a dime, like literally something can fall on the ground, and I cry, and it just
That's okay.
I think that's a lot of the situation too is be okay with your emotions,
Mm.
be okay with getting comfortable with our demise because you're facing it and you can't ignore that. And I think ignoring it in the beginning was very helpful for me because it made it so that I could get a lot of work done and build my medical team. But don't ignore your emotions, feel your emotions, be realistic with what is going on, stay on top of it, and also just live your life the best way that you possibly can. If your life has changed in multiple ways, find ways that you can feel like you're still living your old self. If you miss your old self, find ways to live with that old self, but also move forward and accept your new self and accept your new life. And yeah, just hug yourself and hold it close to your heart. That's the best thing that I can say to do.
And charge your batteries.
And charge your batteries
Charge your batteries.
and stay charged.
Well, hey, thank you so much for doing this. There's, we had some hurdles to get through. I'm so glad we were able to make this episode happen. I'm so excited for everybody to listen to this. Make sure, you follow along on TikTok. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I also appreciate it. I know that we'll talk again in the future, so I look
Absolutely.
forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Rob.